Oh, this one's a tough one, a tough one, tough one. That's the words. I remember words exist now. Anyway, hello, welcome to Collective Creations. In this video, we're talking about my shortest runtime movie and my longest runtime movie. There are no posters yet. Be warned, one of these is explicit. I have been going through my shelf and realizing I have way too many movies that I haven't seen yet, so I'm trying to go through a lot of them. And in this process, I was like, what if I could make a fun video out of that? And I was like, well, what's the shortest runtime movie I have, and what's the longest? And, oi, there's some real discrepancies here. Now, firstly, the shortest film I actually own is A Trip to the Moon, which I have the, is it Masters of Cinema release or whatever it was? Was it Arrow Academy? It's up there, I can't remember. It's a big book. There's an image there. It's too big and too heavy to take down. It's got a big book and everything. It's a nice release, but again, that that film is 12 minutes long. It's technically like longer than it initially was when it first came out because they've added extra little seconds of like, oh hey, we've restored the film and here are some extra credits for restoration, all that, whatever. So the runtime on that is extended. But I'm like, look, that's a bit easy. A 12-minute long film that I've already seen like 3 times, and you can watch it on eBay on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube for free. Either version. I think there's a color version, a black and white. This one has a bunch of different scores. It's a great release, but again, if you're that passionate about film history to get a 12-minute long film on Blu-ray, the version I have has a giant book. Big-ass book about George Millay and just cinema history. So in my hands, I have 2 movies. One which is the shortest feature-length runtime, which 40 minutes is considered the shortest for a feature length by everyone except for like SAG, which is the Actors Guild or whatever. They consider it to be 60 minutes. So I'm like, well, look, given everyone else is saying 40 minutes plus, I'm going to go with a film that's as close to 40 minutes as possible. My choice was Fat Pussy. This is the AGFA release, the Blu-ray. Yeah, this is porn. I'm just gonna say it. This is actually porn. Like, it's genuinely an X-rated film. I bought this a couple years back at Supernova. Surprisingly, that's a pop culture convention in Melbourne. Dead End DVD had a copy. They had a couple copies. It's actually got the slipcover too, and they were selling it. They were telling me at the time that they were telling me like the legend of the film, of how like there's an old theater they were gonna destroy whatever, and they were looking through the bins, and one of the bins was an old porno reel for Bad Pussy. And so I don't know if I have to censor that word, by the way, because YouTube. So I'm going to refer to it as Batwoman, who one of the characters accidentally keeps referring to her as Batwoman, and they have to correct him each time he does it. It's hilarious. So Joel at Dead End was telling me about this, and he was even saying how the Raka Raka boys, the guys who did Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, they bought it as well. They had bought it that same day. So I have the same Blu-ray that those guys have. I didn't even know who the hell they were when he was talking about them, because I didn't know what Raka Raka was until I watched Talk to Me, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I watched some of the videos and I was like, oh, okay. So, yeah. The other film I have is War and Peace. This is 52 minutes. This, the Criterion release, is 422 minutes long. And now you might want to say, hey, but Julian, there's a discrepancy there. This film wasn't released in its entirety. Yes, that's true. This film was released over the course of 2 years, from 1966 to 1967. They released it in 90 to 120 minute long intervals over several months. When it was officially fully done, you would have to watch it over the course of a couple of days. Like, literally, cinemas would be like, yeah, we're going to screen this over the course of 4 days. We're not playing this film in full. Some cinemas have, some haven't. I've seen Saturn Tango in its full, which is like 7 to 8 hours long. Was that even 10 hours long? That was a long fucking movie. And that one I do not have on Blu-ray, thank God, because I think it's longer than this. Actually, I think this is longer, just. either way, I watched that the Astor in full, and it was trial and tribulation. Hell of a picture. So this is the Russian version of War and Peace, in response to the poorer adaptation by the Americans with, was it Audrey Hepburn? The Russians were like, hey, we're going to make our own, and it's going to be better. And this is a 2K digital restoration from Criterion that was released in 2019. And like I said, 422 minutes long. I haven't seen this one yet. I've seen the other one. I watched it the other day when I thought of this video. So I now have to spend 422 minutes watching this fucking movie. It's on 2 discs. Like, each disc is a different selection of runtime. The first disc is 245 minutes long. The second disc is 177. I don't know when I'm going to have time to do this, so this video might take several weeks before I finally actually watch this. So I'm filming this first half now. But yeah, so this is a very interesting film just in general, but the fact that, again, they were just like, go all out, do it, adapt the whole book, whatever, and hence it's 422 minutes long. My next best selection was Napoleon, which is a silent movie, which is like almost the same runtime. I kind of want to watch this, though. I haven't seen Napoleon either, but it's nice to just have them. So I'll be watching this, but firstly, let's talk about Batwoman, but the porno. Batwoman. Very fun release from AGFA. I always forget what they're actually called. It says here, American Genre Film Archive and Something Weird presents this, which is actually porn. This is a really nice release, actually. You can get the standard release now, which is just this. I can't show any of the back images. They're vaguely pornographic, but I can't really show it. It is 52 minutes long and has 2 different restorations, as this stipulates 2022 preservation from a newly discovered 16mm print, as well as a 2017 preservation from Something Weird 16mm print, so hence there's 2 different print versions on this, which is insane. But yeah, so the director is unknown, 1970 ? Letterboxd has 1973, but I guess they just had to choose a year, because they don't know when it was made, they don't know who the people are, they literally call them Buddy and Sam. As it says, the citizens of Gotham City are under attack by smut filmmakers and only one hero can help. Bad Pussy, aka Dora Dildo, they mentioned that one time in the film with a voiceover, which was really funny to me, hangs out in her secret headquarters. It's an outhouse. When her twat begins to twitch, oh my god, I'm going to have to censor the shit out of this video, warning her of imminent crime, Batwoman, again, going to just replace Bat just with woman every time, hops on her holy hippity hop. It's called a hippity hop. It's a bouncy ball thing. I didn't know it was called. It's got so many names, but it's classically called a hippity hop. Stupid name, but still. To foil the grotesque sex games of an unhappily married couple, Buddy and Sam. Considered to be the first adult film parody, Bad Pussy is a sublime yet nightmarish extraterrestrial experience made by outlaw filmmakers who remain unidentified to this day. AGFA and Something Weird are thrilled to present this brand new preservation, complete with newly discovered footage and the original long-lost ending, along with a utility belt of extras. All the extras are just more porn. I took a brief look at all of them because they're all short films, and it's just more porn. I'm like, fuck, alright. But like I said, it's, got a booklet. Really nice release. What do I think of the film, though? Look, there are so many ways to look at this film. And watching it by yourself, you realize this is just porn. It has an X-rated certificate and everything. It starts with a naked couple just arguing, and then they are looking at a newspaper and decide, hey, he's like, I want to have sex like it's showing here in this magazine. It's a big-ass newspaper, but anyway. And so they basically just try oral sex, as if they've never done that before. And they do it really badly. It's hilarious, because he doesn't get hard for a very long time until she does a particular thing that arouses him. And I'm like, how the fuck they've been having sex for like 20 minutes now, and he hasn't gotten hard yet. This is ridiculous. and while they're doing sex stuff and also arguing about how pathetic they are and whatever, like each other, they think each other's pathetic. Again, like I said, unhappily married couple. It is hilarious. About 20 minutes in, it cuts to Batwoman, and it's like, gives you the narration, she's at her headquarters, whatever, and she has her twitch, and then strips naked, and then gets dressed, and then gets on her hippity hop, jumps across town, fights a guy who is assaulting a woman in the middle of a park. Such a wide shot, it's uncanny. And then she bounces along to their apartment and breaks in and confronts them and then has sex with them. And then that's the rest of the thing. They just have sex. They have a really weird three-way. And then Batwoman just leaves and goes back to her place, and the couple decide that they're going to get a divorce. It's like, okay, so story-wise, very minimal. Cinematography-wise, not great. A lot of, when they're outside, extreme wide shots, extreme long shots, I should say. It's not even wide, it's in 4:3. It's just very far in the distance, like they were hiding while they were filming it. The porn itself in the apartment is just one camera angle. Doesn't really move much. Like they go from a shot of him at his desk, and then it moves to just the whole room of the bed. There's a lot of parts that they should have cut out. Realistically, the audio drops out a bunch of times because the director off screen is telling them what to do. And there's a lot of times where that's really funny because the director obviously says something, audio is completely cut out, audio comes back, the actors look off camera and say, sorry, what was that? And then the audio drops out again, and then it comes back in, and they just slightly move around. They don't like suddenly change positions like they've gone from cartwheeling to playing basketball. They just stay in the same position and just move a little bit. I'm like, oh my god. It's very lacking in terms of variety, if you will, like as a porno. Yeah, it's just like there's a lot of goofy moments like that where they have to cut out the audio because of directions being thrown in off screen. So instead of just cutting that footage out, they just work with it. Even when Batwoman eventually shows up, there's her and I think Buddy, was that his name? Her and Buddy are doing the deed, so much so that she's falling off the bed, and she genuinely falls off the bed and hits her head and everything, and he stops and asks her if she's okay, and she's laughing about it. They all start laughing, all of the crew start laughing, and then they just go back to having sex. So yeah, as a film, not great. As a porno, not great either. It's so 70s it hurts. Like, there's a reason why porn has evolved a lot since then. It feels cheap, it feels dirty, it doesn't particularly, I mean, I didn't get aroused at all watching this because I'm just like, there is nothing happening here. There's close-ups of certain things that you probably don't want to look at, but it depends on what your fancy is. There's so much. The thing is, too, is that while the sex is trying to happen, they're arguing with each other. So even if you wanted to be in the mood, you can't unless you really like hearing people argue the whole fucking time, because if that's your particular niche, this is the film for you. If not, you won't be watching this for the porn. You'll be watching it because it's fucking hilarious how much they argue. And it's really bad arguing. Like, it clearly feels like they had a script and they're trying to just remember the script and say the line of the script, but it's not in the way where there's actual conversational elements. Like, she's trying to say her line of dialogue and he keeps saying other things, and she's not responding to what he's saying. She's trying to finish her line of dialogue as if she's reading off cue cards or something, and there's no interjections. It's so bizarre. It's an uncanny piece of filmmaking. And even again, when Batwoman shows up, it's even more so an uncanny piece of filmmaking. Like, it's a pretty rough print, obviously 16mm, it's pretty beat up, there's a lot of dirt issues and stuff. But yeah, as a film, I would not give it a strong rating. I didn't even give it a star rating on my letterbox because I'm like, I don't think I can give this a star rating. It's bad. Like, I'd maybe give it a star or a star and a half because it doesn't really achieve either a good narrative storytelling, good characters, good cinematography, good direction, good writing, good acting. None of it's great. And then as a porno, none of it's great. So it's like, this is kind of shit, but it's really funny. And it's really funny too, because again, Batwoman has her hippity hop. So she takes forever to bounce across town. And they have the goofiest soundtrack playing the whole time. It is genuinely a joy to watch. Like, this is the kind of thing where you would... It's like one time I showed my brother's friends The Room. They wanted to watch a movie. They were all half drunk. I'm like, I've got the funniest movie. I put on The Room. They had a fucking ball. I'm standing here in the corner just being like, this is fucking hilarious that these kids are just laughing their heads off at this stuff. Not actually kids, but they were like 20, 21. And they're having the time of their life watching this thing. They don't give a shit about the story, because who the hell does? It's just, what the fuck is happening? This is the kind of film you would want with that kind of a crowd. Just a bunch of people who are like, we're okay to watch a bunch of people fuck on screen because the rest of it is hilarious. And that's why you'd want to watch this. Like, I wouldn't watch this with my partner. I wouldn't watch this with people who are immediately close unless they were completely on the level of, this is the funniest shit you'll ever watch. So, hard to particularly say that it would be great with a crowd, but maybe. I don't know if you could legally show this because it's X-rated. Like if you were to show it in a theater per se. Like, I wouldn't be suggesting this to the Cinemaniac board. Hey, by the way, let's watch Batwoman. Yeah, and there's a 52-minute long runtime. I mean, it's fine, I guess. It's, again, if you go on modern porn websites and you get the 13-minute long cut of a certain video, and then whoever creator was, whatever company, decides to release the longer version, the extended cut, you realize it's like 45 minutes long to an hour, and you're like, how do they just keep doing that for that amount of time? Like, I know it's all just acting, but how? And like, that's like keeping it up, keeping it enjoyable for people, even though, again, fake as shit. But then it's just consistent the whole time. Like, occasionally it'll be like, oh, we're going to have like a 2-minute long prologue or a 5-minute long prologue, and then we'll actually just, look, they're fucking now. But with Batwoman, it's just like, they're just doing that the whole time, and badly, because again, they're not good at anything they do. Any typical way of having sex, they're bad at it. He's clearly not aroused for a lot of it, so he's just there. I'm like, I don't even think that they were properly fucking with that kind of penetration, if you will. So it just makes it funnier. You know, you can't really get that from modern porn, if you will, except for if it's just really goofy overacting or whatever. So yeah. Oh, it's not artistic, let's put it that way. But as a parody, it's also kind of bad. Like, I cannot imagine anyone watching this and thinking that this is a good adaptation of Batman, because none of it is at all. Like, she has a kind of cave, but again, it's an outhouse, which I think is meant to be a joke in itself. Like, it clearly is a joke. It is she just walks out of a wooden outhouse in the middle of nowhere. And that's, like, is there an elevator going down? Like, is there a shaft she goes down? Is there anything like that? Semi-pun intended. No, nothing. You just don't see her leaving or whatever. Obviously, they're just like, well, just walk out of here. Who cares? She has a vaguely Batman-reminiscent costume, but again, she doesn't have a Batmobile. She has the hippity-hop. She's in Gotham, but it's just like, I don't know, San Francisco or some shit. She's just in a random city in America, just probably more Midwestern than San Francisco, but it's just there. Like, nothing's visually distinct as, hey, that's that place, you know. They don't do any set dressing or whatever. It's all just cheap. So yeah. Anyway, that's the shortest one. Check it out. I would recommend it because it's hilarious. But again, if you're not really into X-rated stuff, I wouldn't recommend it. But it's goofy as shit. Again, it's like watching The Room, but with sex. Like, I mean, The Room has sex in it too, doesn't it? Anyway. Now let's cut to, in a couple weeks' time, talk about War and Peace. Okay, not quite 2 weeks, but about a week and a half. Nevertheless, I watched War and Peace. I actually double featured it with just a second. The second longest film I own, Napoleon. Turns out really good precursor to War and Peace because they both have Napoleon in it. So, okay, how do I even present this? Oh my god, it's weird because I'll have to do a contrast to the other film in a bit. So let's just start with this, eh? All right, so. For reference, runtime-wise, Napoleon is 332 minutes. That's 5.5 hours. War and Peace is 422 minutes. That's 7 hours and 20 minutes or something. I don't know. A good question. Okay, Julian, you have a 7-odd hour long film and a 5.5 hour long film. Why the fuck would you watch them both at the same time-ish on the same days? Well, I felt like it was weird because both of these films have act structures or parts. War and Peace, really nicely, basically is 4 films combined together throughout a conceding plot and conceding characters. There is no real part of it in the first 2 parts that can't be considered their own films. The first film has a start, a middle, and an end. The second film has a start, a middle, and an end. They all just have that, you know? They're more like day in the life. They're like Richard Linklater films if they were Russian and about people in like the 1900s and the 1800s. The third part is set in 1812, so it's probably set in the early 1800s just in general. It's a really short period of time, actually. They don't really tell you how long it goes for in terms of years. There probably was actually a subtitle, but I just know that part 3 was 1812 because that's the war with Napoleon. So that part there, the War of Napoleon, is about 80 minutes long. That's the third part, and that is like the only one that really is in the middle. It feels like an in the middle because it's a war. You know, it's our main 2 characters, technically, Andre and Pierre, and one of them's a soldier, and one of them is just a gentleman, because Pierre's a fucking idiot, and he's just like, hey, I'm just gonna go and watch this war with Napoleon, and then he gets caught up in it, and it's a whole thing. But it's a hell of a spectacle. But then the last part is about Pierre. Each of them are named after particular characters. The first one's about Andre, the second one's about Natasha, the third one about the war, and the fourth one about Pierre. So when you look at it in contrast to Napoleon as a film, the reason why I did a double feature was because I did the first part of this, and I was like, man, this was really good. Should I watch part 2? Knowing that part 1 was like 2.5 hours, and part 2 will be like 1:40, then there's an 80-minute, then there's another 1:40. And I'm like, what if I just watched Napoleon? I just thought, why not? You know, it's the other longest film I have. It's a silent film from 1927. It's, you know, silent intertitles, color tinted, black and white, all that fun stuff, 4:3 until it becomes a panoramic. And I think that was a much smarter idea on my part, especially as someone who's had both of these 2 on Blu-ray for several years now. I've had Napoleon since maybe 2023, mid to late 2023, and War and Peace I've had since at least the pandemic. So it was a hell of a decision of mine to just double feature it. The reason why I'm noting this is because it was really effective. Watching part 1 of this, then watching part 1 of Napoleon, watching part 2 of this on the Tuesday, watching part 2 of Napoleon, which was a lot shorter because Napoleon, despite being 4 acts, is technically 2 acts because it's an act with an intermission and then an extra hour, and then another act with an intermission and then another 80 minutes. 80 minutes? Yeah. So, to some degree, I was like, fuck, okay, what I'll do, because on the Tuesday, this is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of thing, I did this in 3 days, which is not a bad idea. Like, sure, if you have the availability to watch these all in one foul swoop, go for it. But I think realistically, there's no reason not to pace yourself. This isn't like Saturn Tango where you have to constantly watch the whole thing because it's a slow moving narrative, whereas this is a narrative that you can watch in chapters. It's designed that way. It was made that way. They did it. Part 1 and Part 2 were both in 1966. Part 3 and Part 4 were a year later in 1967. Not like just the next year. It was literally a year later. Like, I think the first part was like April 66 and the second part was June 66. Then the next year, June 67 was Part 3, and then like November 67 was Part 4. And so it's really interesting to watch it that way. Because in theory, the first 2 parts work well as a good double feature, but it's really long because the first part, again, is like 2.5 fucking hours. A very good 2.5 hours. Part 2 was about Natasha, so that was great to watch, and had a different mood, had a different environment, but still intertwined the same characters from previously. Natasha had been introduced in the first film, the first part, but now she's a proper character. It's about her romance with Andre and whatnot, and just a year in her life and how she really screws things up. And then Napoleon, I was like, I'll watch Act 2 of Napoleon now. And because Act 2 was only an hour, I'm like, alright, look, I'm going to watch Act 3. I watched half of Act 3, left with an hour to go because I had to work the next day. And then on the Wednesday, I triple featured it, technically. I watched all the rest of Napoleon because Part 2 of this, the one with Natasha, it ends with Napoleon showing up in Russia. Like, hey, I'm going to destroy Russia or whatever, or take over Moscow. So, Moscow. So, that's where Part 2 ends. So I'm like, shit, I'm already watching Napoleon. I might as well watch the rest of Napoleon, thinking it would give me an up-to-date knowledge of Napoleon. I was wrong. So I binged the rest of Napoleon, which wasn't too hard. Again, an hour plus an extra hour and a half, whatever. The thing is, Napoleon, on the other hand, is a very short period of Napoleon's life. It starts with him as a kid and ends with him invading and and conquering Italy. It doesn't go on from there. That was meant to be have an extra 5 or 6 parts to it. Which, again, this was already 330 odd minutes. The original cut was 9 hours. This is a 5.5 hour cut. It was never finished. The guy who made it could never get the budget to finish it off, so they never did. So that, in its own right, doesn't really have a conclusive narrative to it, and it implies, hey, he's going to go on to bigger and better things, like conquering the rest of Europe. But you don't see that. He does Italy, and France loves him, and that's the end of it. But that was enough context for me understanding who he was as a guy. It's based a lot of it in historical fact. There's a bit of grey area, I would say, because it's very, well, a bit wanky, a bit pretentious, a bit, is this guy actually that good, or are we just trying to make him out to be that good? Like an objectivity, like I'm going for this degree of, the filmmaker is definitely saying he's the greatest person who's ever lived and I'm going to show that he's the greatest person. It has one of those moments where he's looking at like a map and he's thinking and he's got all these things popping up in front of his face. It's like that meme from like the Hangover film or whatever when the guy tries to do math and it has all these symbols. It's exactly that, but like 100 years before the fucking Hangover movie did it. And so it's still a very interesting film. It's still really well depicted. It's insanely well filmed. It's insanely well produced. I would wholeheartedly recommend Napoleon. It's very weird that I'm getting sidetracked here, but Napoleon, again, gave me context for this, because when Napoleon shows up in Part 3, well, he actually is in Part 2 anyway. It turns out he was actually there when Andre he's in a battle and he gets injured and he wakes up at one stage and Napoleon's just standing there. And like that's a very famous shot from the film. I didn't realize it was Napoleon. So it was very funny, like going on Letterboxd and looking at the wallpapers, and that was one of them. I'm like, oh shit, that was Napoleon. I didn't even realize. But that made it more interesting, because then you get to Part 3 where they're fighting Napoleon, and Napoleon has obviously gone through most of Europe and is now trying to conquer Russia. So that gives you a great amount of context beforehand, especially if you just don't know that stuff. As someone who didn't know that stuff, now I do, and it's great. There's still a lot of gap between Italy and Russia, but I mean, there's enough room for just, yeah, sure, he conquered the rest of Europe and then moved on. They mentioned the other places he conquered, a couple other countries, and then moved on to Russia. So it's not all of Europe, but it's a lot of Europe. Nevertheless, you get to Part 3. it's starts off in Moscow and everything with the main characters, but then of course because they know that Napoleon's on his way, war happens, and the whole second half, basically the whole second and third and fourth quarter of the 4 quarters of it. The first quarter is at home. The other quarters are in the war. It is absolute chaos. It is beautifully photographed. It is absolutely insane. This is it's a kind of film where they emphasize the huge production, the huge cast and everything. Like, we had over 10,000 actors or some shit, the kind of thing that they would do for, like, Gone with the Wind and for Cleopatra, those kind of epics, where they're like, yeah, we had a giant fucking cast because we kind of needed it. And also we had basically all the money in the world, because the Soviet Union really wanted to show Hollywood that they could make a much better adaptation. And they really did. So and to think that I'm pretty sure Hollywood made a new adaptation with Lily James a couple of years ago, and apparently that was well received. So great, there's an English version if you don't want to watch this, but I highly recommend this. It's in Russian and it's in French, because of course the French invade, but it's great, it's such a beautiful film, and each part starts with an opening credit telling you who the actors are, who are the camera people, who are the production people, all that stuff. So it doesn't just jump into it. It acts like mini films, which is why I wanted to kind of also double feature them, because Napoleon doesn't act like a separate films. It goes straight into it. It's like Act 1, bam, we're there, intermission, Act 1, Part 2, then Act 2, intermission, Act 2, Part 2, and then that's the end of it. That feels like a whole film. That's the kind of thing you'd watch in one whole go, or over the course of 2 different nights. Act 1 one night, Act 2 the next night. War and Peace, on the other hand, you could watch it in 4 nights. That's how it's been previewed other times since its release, is you watch it over the course of 4 nights, which was my plan, but then my mate was like, let's go out Thursday and watch a movie, so I have to do that. But yeah, War, great. It's insane. It's just absolutely insane that they filmed all of that and that it works so well. You could tell in the year between them doing Part 2 and Part 3 that they've basically reinvented the wheel just so they can do some more fun type of filming. To the point that they show that a lot of similar types of filming techniques in Part 4 as well. There's a whole part where a camera just swings over the top of everything, like just zip lines all the way, and it's clearly going from a high point down to a low point, but it's going all the way through this whole big mass of people. And then it'll just have really random artistic cuts. There are so many times where it just cuts randomly to the little things and then cuts away within like a couple seconds. So you don't even really understand what it is, but it's basically like a transition. The kind of thing that it was either this film or Napoleon had a kind of transition where they like closed in with a small aperture and then zoomed in and then opened up again, and bada bing, bada boom, you've transitioned from one location to the next. Either way, this has a glorious single take that is just a whole dolly shot going across, and then of course it has some smoke come in so you can get a good cut to a different area, and it keeps doing that just to show how long this battlefield is and how much it incorporates this area. And then of course you get the part 4 where Napoleon has conquered Moscow, and it's about Pierre and seeing how the French behave in Russia and what everyone else has to try to do to survive. And I won't spoil the ending, but it's really, really fun. It's really interesting. Again, beautifully made. Part 1 and Part 2, you're kind of thinking, Julian, you haven't really mentioned those parts. Why not? Well, they're very much more in the, I'd say, melodramatic area. It's all about rich, prestigious people who go to balls and dance and try to, court young people, whatever, because again, the 30-year-olds are trying to court the late teens, whatever, because if your daughter isn't married at the age of 18, then she's basically useless. That's the kind of day and age we're talking about for these movies, which is feasible, in our modern culture, it's very much frowned upon. But in their culture, that was the norm. A 30-year-old man, 30 to 40-year-old man is like an achieved man. He has, status. He's allowed to go and marry a fucking teenager. Whereas, legally, of course, and with the parents' consent, because again, daughters are property back then, they're just bred to be wives, basically. That's just how it was, isn't it? I mean, it kind of is in some societies. It really depends. Nevertheless, but in the middle time, like, the guys have to, go to war and be a soldier or become a politician or become an accountant or do something that's a, prestigious thing, assuming you're actually in the upper the middle class, a gentleman per se, like our main two characters are, Andre and Pierre. So you get that. You get this interesting perspective on how they're looking at society, how they're interacting with society, the kind of people that they are, and how that's reflected in what everyone else thinks of them. And again, it's not until part 2 that you get a fully fleshed out version of Natasha, who was only very briefly shown in part 1 as a younger girl who's has a birthday. She's like, oh, she's like 17. Actually, I don't even think she's that old. She's like 15 or something. I don't know. I think this film takes place over like 5 or 6 years anyway, because she's definitely in her mid-teens at the start and her end teens at the end. So yeah. But let's do a roundup. For shits and gigs, I got all 3 of them. To do the Batwoman one, the porno, it's a hell of a contrast to contrast this cheap, low budget, bad script, bad dialogue, bad acting, not even good looking sex or anything. Goofy as hell, fun. At least it has promise to it in that regard. It's funny, it's goofy, it's stupid as shit. The sex isn't great, but at least you can watch these people argue with each other, and that's really funny. And then when, of course, Batwoman shows up, she's also funny. It's an amusing film. It's 50-odd minutes. It's fine. It's easy. And this is a good Blu-ray release as well, I will admit. Because, again, it does come with a butt ton of extra special features, so I highly recommend it. If you're going to get it, you get this version. I don't think it comes with a slipcover anymore. But yeah, so... yeah, it's really cheesy. Nevertheless, as the shortest film, technically in my collection, that isn't A Trip to the Moon, it's not really one I would watch with people, unless, again, like I mentioned earlier, you're in a room full of drunk people and you just want to watch something really silly. Like, you're not there to watch it for the porn, you're there to watch it for the banter and the bickering and all that stuff. The cartoonish nature to it. In contrast, you of course have War and Peace and Napoleon. Napoleon being a straight 330-minute long film, broken up technically in 4-act structures, but it's realistically 2, with intermissions in between. Beautifully filmed, revolutionary for what it did. It puts a lot of modern films to shame in the way that it's filmed, and, I mean, you compare it to the previous one, it's gargantuan in contrast. This is an absolute stunning film, and almost masterpiece in my mind, mostly because it doesn't really have a great end note. It doesn't end in the best, like, in the way I would have preferred. Not to mention the fact that it has a whole, like, hour dedicated to him romancing Josephine, and then there's also a girl there who's just obsessed with him, who apparently was never real. They just made up a girl to show how obsessed people were with him, which is fair. A lot of biopics will do that, where they'll combine a bunch of people into one for, like, to prove a point. And that's exactly what happens here, but that's also, like, the last time we see Josephine is with this basically stalker who lives in her house now. It's interesting, but it's really well made. It's very strange to watch the last 30 to 40 minutes of it because it's panoramic. It's in 3 different film panels, which when they initially filmed it like that, like projected onto a screen, you get this big panoramic view with 3 different cameras having filmed 3 different sections, which sometimes the timing is off. There's a black spot every once in a while. People will walk between frames and they'll, like, not be perfectly cemented because the cameras are so big you can't put them right next to each other as perfectly as you'd want, but it makes for some interesting visuals. On a screen like my own, which is 65 inches, it doesn't really work perfectly. You got to sit really close to really appreciate the view, but as a cinematic thing, it would probably be absolutely remarkable, especially because it's a whole war sequence. And just a great release overall from BFI, really well restored, beautiful score, it's in a great 7.1 mix, and it is encapsulating, and it kind of has to, because it's 330 odd minutes of pure music, because you can't have a moment of silence, basically, because it's a silent film. So anyway, because silent films had music to them, of course they did. And then War and Peace is just breathtaking. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. It is a triumph of cinema. It is something all to its own as just absolutely mind-boggling that they were able to make this. It's once in a blue moon that someone could make this, especially as a film. Like nowadays you have mini-series and stuff like that. You can put in a lot of budget from Apple TV or some shit, or maybe Disney, but it doesn't have the wow factor of this. Made on film, beautifully cinematographed, all on location, as realistic as possible, and it is insane. It's so amazing, and I will gladly watch it again. Like, I will still watch the others again, but this one I would gladly go back to in a heartbeat because it was just so beautiful. And again, you can watch it in the 4 different segments over the course of several days, you know? Or you could say you're binging a Netflix show, because a lot of those shows obviously drop all at once. It's basically like this, so you could easily make the argument, gee, I couldn't imagine watching a 7.5 hour long film. Anyway, let me go watch a 10 hour long TV show called Stranger Things. So, you know, I don't even think that show is 10 hours anymore. It's not. Those episodes are so long now. It's poor contrast to this, where this will have one part be, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, and that'll have the same thing, but this at least is good. So yeah, I highly recommend getting this version to the Criterion release. It is really, really, really well made. Has some great documentaries and extra featurettes, and an essay by Ella Taylor. Fantastic release. And that's it. This was a really fun experiment, because I've also had this week just a lot of extra work. I have a warehouse job. We're moving warehouses, so that contextualizes this video a little bit. But because I'm like, look, I don't know how tired I'm going to be every single day because I'm working extra hours. So to come home and to watch these films and to know that this is what I'm doing, I was wholeheartedly there for, and I've really enjoyed it. This was a really fun experience that I will not be doing again. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to check out these films, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.